as crazy as it sounds to even say it, it's hard to leave my home office to like go have dinner or go do something like walk the dog. It's just if there's like this magnetic pull to stay here and to get stuff done. Whereas, when you were in an office, there was a little bit of a, motivation to get out and get home.
Welcome to The Defense Never Rests with Morgan and Akins, your monthly dose of uncommon sense about all things legal and some that are not.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of The Defense Never Rests. I'm your host, Megan Henry. And today I'm joined by Dana Applegate. Dana was on the podcast about a little over a year ago, right after, everything shut down because of COVID. And, we were juggling homeschooling and working from home and, kind of sharing our struggles with it. So we got back together now to see where we are now and how things are going. And I'm going to dig in a little bit with her with some of my burning questions. So with that, let's bring her in. Hi, Dana. Thanks so much for joining me again on The Defense Never Rests. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you.
So this is, you were on over a year ago, right after, everything kind of like shut down. So I think we're in a much better place than we were last time we sat down and chatted.
Yeah.
Well, how's it going now? Are we in a better place? Well, you have an office now. You're not at your kitchen table.
I have a dedicated office, so that's very nice. Definitely improved, the situation, less disruptions. I don't know. I think it's still very disruptive, the school schedule, the work schedule, the working from home. I go into my office occasionally and then I'm like, oh, I miss it so much. And so, it's still odd. It's still crazy that it's been over a year that we've been doing this. And I think we were making jokes then just a couple of weeks in about, how we couldn't take it anymore. And yet here we are.
I know.
Still surviving, I think.
And I mean, I do think it's gotten better to a certain extent. Like at least last spring, we were so much more responsible for the school aspect.
Oh yeah.
And so at least that's kind of, I'm not wearing that teacher hat anymore. And I like that it's gone.
Yes. Agree.
But yeah, so I was going to ask you about your office. So is your office back open or is it on like a modified schedule?
It's open voluntarily. I mean, we do go in for meetings, we have meetings, but it's all, voluntary. If you want to come in, nobody's being forced to come in at this point. I think like most companies, we're still talking about September, provided that the schools, I mean, that's a big thing. And I feel fortunate to work for a company that thinks about those things and is concerned about, if schools are still not full day, how can we get people back in because people are still managing those schedules. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, it is nice to go in every once in a while and see people and, just feel like you're in an office environment, even though it's kind of isolating. There's not that many people in a really big space. So I've never seen more than like a dozen people.
Yeah. And I really think a lot of places are rethinking their whole like approach to being in the office. Like, do we really need this big space? Do we really need everyone to come in? Like, I think it just has forced a reevaluation of, what works and what doesn't work.
Right. And then how can we modify that, footprint and even reduce, potentially some costs
Sure. Yeah.
of a space that we're not using. So I think that's, that's all good. And at the same time, hopefully, add value to people's personal lives.
Yeah. I mean, I do still find it difficult as I think we discussed back in last March, like everything kind of bleeds in together. And at least now personally, since my kids are back in school, I have more dedicated time that I can focus. So I'm not as like scattered, but like, it's still when you're always home, it kind of your day, like it's hard to shut your day off.
Yeah. It's like never ending. It's just the run on day. And then, it really is. I do find that. And it's hard. As crazy as it sounds to even say it, it's hard to leave my home office to like go have dinner or go do something like walk the dog. It's just, if there's like this magnetic pull to stay here and to get stuff done. Whereas, when you were in an office, there was a little bit of a, motivation to get out and get home, right? Go outside and have some fresh air and get home. And now it just seems like, well, I'm already home. People can come see me while I'm sitting here. So I find that
Yeah.
hard. I find it really difficult because I'm not good at boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is, I have the same problem too. It's like when, it's almost, dinner time. And I'm like, oh, well, just let me do like one more thing. Whereas before it'd be like, let me take care of this on the train ride home or the car ride home. And then once you're home, you're like, okay, like here's my dedicated time for family. So I'm going to put work to the side now. It's all kind of like meshed together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you spent the like majority of your career at a different company. And then about a little over a year ago, actually right before COVID, you made a switch. So what prompted you to take on that change after spending so many years with another company?
So, yeah, I mean, I felt like I wasn't really being fulfilled anymore. And it's kind of strange because I was there for a long time and I knew so many people and I had a variety of roles. But I think that almost added on to when I got to a point where I'd been in the same role for several years, it almost became stale for me.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some different opportunities available, but none of them seemed particularly attractive to me and what I was doing and what I was looking to do. And I'm a problem solver. That at the core of who I am, that's what I like to do. Status quo doesn't work for me. Just kind of managing things. I like to fix things, and so I was looking for opportunities where I could better utilize my skills while also kind of feeding that desire that I have, and not necessarily that I needed a problem, child. I just needed a new challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I had looked for actually quite a bit and,
Okay.
very quietly, just because I wanted to see what was out there and, if I could find something that was a better fit, because I certainly worked for a great company. So I wasn't looking to, just leave that in the wind and, it's not always greener on the other side. And yeah, so then I just, came across this opportunity with ProSite, and it seemed like, a great mix of what they needed and what I could offer them, plus, additional opportunities going forward. And it's definitely been there. It's been full of challenges, which I like, even though they can be stressful at times and
Sure.
overwhelming. It's still that kind of, drives me and motivates me to find solutions.
And, there's something to be said too about not being so complacent and, like there's more growth that comes out of change. So like, I applaud you for saying, like I could stay here and be fine. But I need something more for me.
Yeah. And I've always looked at myself as like this lifelong student. I love to learn. I'm kind of a nerd. And so if I don't feel like I'm learning and being stretched, then I kind of get bored. I turn into, that kid that daydreams then, it's not as interesting to me. So I really do like to be surrounded by people that will continue to challenge me and, see what else is in the tank.
Yeah.
And I think it's fun. It's fun to discover. I've actually, at my former company, I was very blessed and I had people for many years doing that, tapping into
Yeah.
skill sets that I didn't think were my skill sets, but other people were recognizing them and then allowing me, to work in those areas. And, I wanted to get back to kind of that place where
Yeah.
people are then, saying, hey, you can do this, or, hey, can you take this on? And I'm like, sure, and I'm always a person of yes. And so that was the thing, anytime people ask me to do things, I'm like, sure, I'll do it. I'll try it, and so it's been fun. And I like to continue to learn because, yeah, I mean, I still feel like I have, many, many years of my career ahead of me. And, I want to see what else I can do.
And do you find though, like being a person of yes, is that sometimes troublesome for you? Like, because you mentioned you don't have good boundaries, so I can imagine that maybe lead to being the yes person to the disappearing of some boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. Personally and professionally, right? Admittedly, I tend to be, I'm kind of like that person for a lot of people,
Mhm.
and, that definitely drains. And so, yeah, it definitely is. It's just, I really have a hard time. I mean, I think I've gotten better at saying no to some things or saying not right now to some things.
Yeah.
Um, but, again, I'm curious. I like to be challenged. So I can't help myself. It's like this
Yeah.
pull that, I can't resist.
Yeah. And I do think, at least for me, I think having kids kind of forces you to try to say not right now more, because you have this other person or these other people who they need you for certain things. Like they might need you for the soccer game or whatever it may be. So you have to put in some boundaries for them.
Oh, definitely. I mean, example for yesterday, my daughter was really struggling with some math when she came home, and I spent 2 hours, with her going through it and trying to figure it out. Now, it didn't necessarily take 2 hours, but we had a few tantrums
Yeah.
and meltdowns in between, which, elongated the activity. But, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And it was just, I'm sitting here, she's sitting with me, at my desk, and I had my computer up, but I was not working for those 2 hours. I was completely
Yeah.
focused on her, and that's what was necessary then. So, those are moments where at the inner core of me says, "Oh my gosh, you have so much to do. You're going to be working
Hmm.
late tonight to make this up. You didn't really have time for this." Then the other side of me is, "Oh, I'm proud of myself that I was able to say, no, this is the most important thing right now is my
Yeah.
child and helping her." And it's good to have that. So, I'm glad that occasionally I remind myself that my most important role is being, a mother.
Yeah. And I'm sure like that will stick out in her mind too, that because one thing that I've noticed with myself throughout this whole pandemic, and not positively, is that a lot of times I'm like, okay, go away, get out, get out, get out. And then I'm like, what sort of message am I sending if I'm always like telling my kids to go away? But then sometimes I'm like, okay, is what you need really, like, do you really need me for this right now? Like, I do actually need to get some work done. So it's hard because it's like, I think over the last year and a half, we spent so much time together, and I wouldn't say it was all quality. There's a lot of, I think, some negative parts to all that time together.
Yeah. And I mean, it makes me feel better to hear you say that, Megan, because, I do the same thing with, no, I don't have time right now. No, I'm getting on a call. No, I have a meeting. No, I have to
Hmm.
get this done. I got to finish this email, whatever. And you do feel bad, and sometimes I've tried to rationalize it with my daughter to say, but like this, when I'm in the office and not at home, like you don't see me and you don't have this point of access. So I do have that focus. So it is challenging for me too. And I do try to explain it a little, but yeah, that's hard because,
Yeah.
you need that time and you're not really pushing them off. It's just that normally in the old normal world,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have that, for, 8, 10 hours a day. Um,
Yes.
and now you do.
Right.
So, I mean, it's, I don't know. I don't know there's still no solution a year plus later, and there's still no answer to this other than,
No.
doing the best we can.
Right. And yes. And I think that's everything that we're all trying to do is just the best that we can. And I do think it's getting easier. I think a lot of it's getting easier until the summer, and then it's going to be another cluster, but we'll see.
Yeah, 6 more weeks, right, in the school year, and I'm like, "I don't have a summer plan yet."
Not a big enough one, at least.
No.
So, but you make this transition over to ProSite, and then the pandemic happened.
Mm.
So, I mean, like, how was that transition? Because you made such a big move, and now everyone's making this other move that, like, things are stopped, offices are closed, we're moving all to virtual. I mean, that must have just been like a lot to take on, not only learning a new role, but and having this whole new aspect.
Yes, I think in some ways in the beginning, fortunately, we were all kind of, wearing our rose-colored glasses that this wasn't gonna last that long, right? So it wasn't in the beginning, it didn't feel like a heavy burden because it was, a couple of weeks. I'll see everybody in a couple of weeks, we'll just go home and work for a few weeks. This will all blow over and then we'll be back in the office. And then that just kept, building on. Um, so in the beginning, it didn't feel that bad. It was like, oh, okay, well, this is, kind of alarming, definitely throwing a wrench in my kind of onboarding plan because I'd only been there 6 weeks when we went all virtual. But I thought it was temporary. So you managed it for a little while. And then the longer that we were into it, the more difficult I think for me it became, because I then started to recognize how much I lost and how
Yeah.
much longer things were taking, because I just didn't have the same amount of access to people that I was, doing walk bys and meeting in the
Yeah.
office, or having these, side chats over, coffee, or, on to and from meeting walks. So, you start to realize that you lost all of that. And there's people, 6 months into the job that you're on a call with and you're saying, "Oh, hi, nice to meet you." And then there's other people who are like, "Oh, you guys don't know each other?" That's
Yeah.
that's terrible. And you're like, "Well, I didn't know I needed to know that person. I didn't know who that person was. I didn't know what they did." So, that definitely has been challenging. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess I feel really fortunate that our company was so set up for this. Everybody starts day one with a laptop, and, they had everybody come and get all their equipment. So, it was actually a seamless way to transition everyone. It's not, we didn't have a subset of people that we were like, "Oh my gosh, we have to get them equipment." Everybody already had equipment.
Yeah.
So that was kind of nice. And yeah, it's just, you do realize now, I can reflect back a year and see, that I'm not where I wanted to be from a professional achievement standpoint,
Yeah.
coming in, with tall expectations, and then realizing how COVID slowed all of that down.
Yeah. And it really impacts like working well with people, because you're not getting to know them on a good personal level as you would if you saw them on a day by day basis. I mean, those little, like the little interactions, like the talking over coffee, whatever, those go carry a long way, with your relationships with your colleagues, because then you get to know who they are and how they work and what makes them tick a little bit. And then when you're in meetings and things like that, I think it just flows a little bit better when you know the person.
Yes, absolutely. And, while we've probably all shared more than we wanted to on a personal level, with kids and animals and
Yeah.
spouses and everything else going on, and contractors ringing doorbells and what have you, during the work from home situation. Yeah, we definitely lost a lot of that. And that's the other thing too, when you left a meeting, or if you were, 2 minutes early to a meeting, you're having those chit chats. Whereas now
Yeah.
that doesn't really happen. Everybody's jumping on a call,
Mhm.
and then everybody's jumping off when it's over. You're not having, kind of that overflow. So it has, had an impact for me for sure. And, you hope that you can get it back once we, return to the office. But again, I
Yeah.
think that'll never look the same. So
Mm-mm.
I'm never going to return to the space that I left last March, where everybody was in the office every day.
Yeah. No, definitely not. Um, so I know that you love a challenge, so I might know the answer to this question, but what is the, other than loving a challenge, what is your favorite thing about your job?
That it's different every day.
Hmm.
It's, there's no kind of Groundhog Day here. It's, a different fire, a different, case, a different piece. I think it's really cool that my current job has a nice balance between, overseeing cases and claim files and managing that aspect, but then also kind of operational efficiencies and
Hmm.
systems, and, and that side, litigation management. So I get this kind of cool balance between diving into cases and then kind of looking at things from, a very high level and saying, how can we, make this more efficient? How can we optimize
Yeah.
our system? How do we improve our data? So, that's it's a cool thing. It's my favorite thing, is kind of, jumping all around all day, but I'll be the first to admit it can be exhausting some days too,
Yeah.
when you're literally switching back and forth from different things. But I think it's cool.
Yeah. And I mean, it keeps things interesting and it keeps you on your toes, but it also can be frustrating when, like, at least for me, because I mean, that's how, my days are too. I might have a plan and I have my like little to-do list every day, and the plan often goes to shit because like something happens and nothing on this list gets done.
Yeah.
but it's but in a way it's good because it's not boring. It just, you have to be able to roll with it a little bit.
Yes. And I, rely on a lot of people to remind me of things that, we talked about. Cause I'm like, I have 6 meetings back to back, by the time I get to the fourth one, the first two, I have completely forgotten about what we talked about and what I promised you I was going to get to you. So, just make sure in a couple days when you haven't heard from me, you remind me.
It's not you, it's me.
Right. Like, I'm sorry to put the burden on your shoulders, but I'm going to need a few reminders if you want me to actually get this done.
So throughout the many years that you've spent in claims though, and it's not necessarily claims, but just professionally, does one like a moment stand out being like, oh my God, that was the most embarrassing, moment that's ever happened to me, or like you just wanted to hide?
Oh, that's a good one. I don't know if I'm sure, I've no doubt that I dropped the ball somewhere where,
it's still bouncing over there.
Yeah. Where I was kind of like, oh yeah, that was in that email. And I totally, read over it, or I didn't, or, I read it and it didn't mean what now it means to me. Right. You're kind of, balancing things. And there was actually something recently. And again, I don't know that it would go to the top of the list of most embarrassing, but it was information that was, shared with me in November. But at the time it was, an email that had like 4 major things in it. And this was the last thing in the email. So when I went back and looked at it, and I was like, oh, it was there, but I didn't really pay attention to it. Because there were these other things that were more important, that were crucial for me to respond to and give a decision on. And then, that just kind of fell off the map. And now I'm like, oh, wow, if I would have known that at the time, I probably would have made a different decision. And now it's May. And I'm, realizing that we're, 6 months post having that information. And, now we're trying to, make a decision based on that. So, I think that's a sign of COVID, but it's also a sign of poor communication. And I would say that, something that I would learn from, and I try to learn from those things and say, yeah, don't put too many things in one email, or, if something that's really important, don't kind of bury it at the bottom, because, again, people focus on and prioritize. So
I think there's a lot of skill to that too. Like I think about it when I'm writing an email to a client, like, if it's a few paragraphs long, like, well, what are the chances they're going to read the whole thing to the end? And so I really need to put up front, like what I need from them if I'm asking for something, or bold it, or have a list. Sometimes I do a list at the
number
end.
of things. Yeah.
Or I have it on the email at the end. I'm like, to recap, these are our action points, because everyone is so busy, and everyone gets so many emails and have to respond to so many things. So you really need to highlight what's important, so like something like that doesn't happen. It's on both sides, really.
Yeah, it really is. It absolutely is. And I think the working from home and the pandemic have increased emails, which is not good, because I was already at a point where I was, drowning in emails. And now it's just, in 20 minutes on the phone, whatever came in early that morning is now way off the screen. And, you're just kind of like, okay, never saw that, came in 2 weeks ago, never saw that email, never even read it. So yeah, it's definitely a skill that I think we all need to work on, and then figure out how to be more concise, or, hey, you know what, this really doesn't need to be an email. Maybe I should just say, call me when you have a chance and let's talk about this, and then it won't get lost.
Yeah.
So,
although I would say from a lawyer's perspective, that's very difficult, because if you just talk about it on the phone, then it may never have happened.
That's right. That's true.
Because sometimes I need to send the email. It's almost for myself. So then I have it, so I can be like, what did we talk about? So I remember, because again, you talk to so many people, you talk about so many things, talk about so many different cases. So a lot of times it's like, I need to write this to you, so I know that we talked about it, and I won't forget about it in 3 weeks.
It's true. I often say that to people. I'm on the phone. I'm like, all right, I'm sending you an authority email now. Even though we talked about it, let me send it to you, because, I may forget that I gave you that.
Yeah. Yeah. And from my perspective, I like to have the authority emails so I don't forget the authority. Like, because you could write it down, but like you it's really good, helpful to have that.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
like, was it 70 or was it 75? I don't just go with the lower number.
Right.
So, and you and I have talked a lot about like our your daughter and my daughters, and we're talking about them seeing us in this environment, like up front. But what trait of yours do you already see that your daughter has, or hope that she grows to have over time?
I think it's curiosity. Like yesterday we're doing homework here, and part of the reason it took so long was because she was easily distracted. And I said, stop looking at my screens. Look at your paper. Stay focused when you're, on your paper. And she said, well, Mom, it's just so interesting. She was reading. I
Yeah.
had a bunch of things up and she was reading what I had up on the screen. She goes, I just think it's so interesting. And so I think that's it, like that curiosity and finding interest in different things. And I like that instead of sitting here saying like, oh, this is my mom's boring work, she's,
Yeah.
interested in who I'm talking to and what this means and, why I'm saying that. So I think that's the
Yeah.
one.
I think that's great too, because but it also it's very similar to you, that you like to be challenged and you don't want to be bored. And I mean, I think that takes someone a long way, because if they're going to follow your passions and your dreams if you're curious and interested in it.
Yeah.
But it's funny you mentioned about the being distracted, because I noticed that with my older daughter more than my younger one. Her teacher always describes her as kind of as like a mad scientist, because she like, like she's easily like off to something else and very into it. But for me, it could be very frustrating, because like, okay, can you please just do your homework, because this will take you 10 minutes if you focus. It'll take you an hour if you're distracted by every single thing going on around you. But she doesn't want to go upstairs and do her homework. She wants to be at the kitchen table where all the action is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work very well.
No, it doesn't. We've learned that many times over, that the home, we're not really set up for homeschool. No matter where it is, whether it's her room, whether it's the kitchen table, whether it's the dining room table, whether it's my office, like we're just not set up for that, not for children, at least. I mean, adults can have trouble focusing too, but I can focus. I can have pictures all around, but that doesn't mean I'm looking at them all day, but yeah, it's enlightening to see how you kind of set up your world. And then, you deal with something like this and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, we don't really have that quiet space in the house anywhere.
Right. Yeah. So going on that theme of how you'd want your like, trait of yours you want your daughter to have, but what piece of advice do you give her, or do you want to give her for as to her like future growth as she gets older and moves on, like into careers or whatever? What piece of advice do you give her?
So, one that I do give her now, and I hope that it will stay with her, recognizing, of course, generational differences, and that, there's probably, people that don't agree with this, is there's really no substitute for working hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is in school, in life, personally and professionally. It really does. There's just no shortcuts. And, that was something that I think my parents instilled in me. And, I recall probably 10 years ago, we had a mentoring program at my old company. And so it was somebody, coming out of college or had just graduated college as like a summer intern, or I think, and, wanted to know, well, just, how do I advance? What's the quickest way that I advance? And my answer, I guess, was very old fashioned to this person, because I said, well, it's really, working super hard, showing that you're willing to put in extra time, extra effort, and kind of stretch yourself beyond what your current responsibilities are, and finding those pockets to say, hey, I can contribute over here, even though that's really not part of my function. And, his response to me was, yeah, but we just do things, and we meaning like his generation, just do things faster now. Right. So then, we get things faster, we can process things faster. I don't really think we have to work as hard as people in your generation did because we have more technology and things on our side. And I was like, well, listen, I think, I'm personally feel like we're in an industry where it's a very people driven, um, you know, psychologically driven industry where you do have to think a lot and it's not something that can just be processed on a screen through numbers and data. But anyway, that's my long-winded answer of saying to her is kind of showing her you do have to put in the time and the effort, and there's really no substitute for working.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And I always tell both my daughters too is, you know, you don't, because sometimes my older daughters, like, you put so much pressure on me. I'm like, I don't need you to get it all right. I just need you to do your best. So I don't want you to rush through something just to be done with it. If it takes you a long time and you get things wrong, but you tried your best, that's all I care about. But there is that, like, want a quick reward type thing that I think they're just all used to now with, the phones and the iPads and the video games and all that. It's just everything's flashy and quick.
Yeah. And I think that we have, sometimes provided them with a very instant gratification lifestyle. And while, you feel fortunate to be able to do that, at the same time, it's not really teaching them that, you have to work for that. And we do talk about that now, right? We talk about, money and time and, okay, well, just because we can go and get this doesn't mean that's a good way to use our resources. I think we should take this money and do this with it instead. And, so it's those lessons, right? And just trying to teach them as they get old enough to understand.
Right. And it just reminded me of this, my older daughter reads Harry Potter and she loves Harry Potter, but she doesn't really love to read very much. like she loves the idea of reading the books, but then she's very slow to sit down and just pick it up and read. And then she gets upset if her friends finish one of the books before her. And I was like, well, you're never going to finish before anyone if you don't actually put the time in. You have to put the time in to read the book, and she still hasn't totally clicked yet, because she still doesn't just read whenever she's free time. She still would rather be on her iPad, but it goes with that same point. Like, you have to put in the time to get the results.
Yes.
So, and I do think it's something that is lost. So I think that's great advice. So, believe we talked about this last time a little bit, because it was around St. Patrick's Day when we recorded our podcast last year. And I think you were talking about your family does a really big St. Patrick's Day celebration and everything. So it just had me thinking a little bit about this, that seems like you have a really close relationship with your family. So did you grow up with like a really close-knit family? You just stayed that way? What was your upbringing like?
Yeah, so we did. I was one of 4 kids. And so we were, had a pretty big, small family, our insular family. And then we lived pretty close to my dad's parents. And so we were always kind of getting together with aunts and uncles and, enjoying that kind of extended family, big holidays, birthdays. And then, things change over time, when you go to college and all that kind of stuff. But then now as, adults, I think we've, brought some of those things back and trying to stay more focused on that and not just get so caught up in, kind of our lives and activities and just really understanding that we all need that recharge and how good we feel when we spend that time together, and then how that kind of carries you forward and just kind of that positive world of being surrounded by people that you love. And we did a couple of years ago. So my parents, when I was younger, they had with their some of their friends and some of their cousins and aunts and uncles, they had a monthly poker night. And it would kind of rotate around the houses, and it was just adults only and stuff. But all the kids, we would have fun and get together, and we get to stay up super late because, wherever we were, it was late. Or if we were home, people were there late. So it was a lot of fun. And then, of course, that kind of went away just, as people got older and, didn't do that anymore. But then about 5 years ago, we started to do that. So my younger sister and I started, with one of my cousins, and then my mom and her husband still participate in it too. So we did it. And then we had a year break because of COVID, we weren't
Yeah.
getting together, and because we weren't, all in the same units and pods. But we actually just had our first one in a year, 2 weekends ago, and it was so much fun. And
Yeah.
so I think that's it. It's just realizing that there's really no substitute for family as long as you get along with them.
Well, and in all family, there's always problems, it's never
Right.
perfect. But yeah, I grew up with, I'm one of 4 kids as well, and I have a lot of cousins on both sides. And, I always was pretty close with my cousins, and I never understood people who didn't have that relationship, or at least not that I didn't understand. It was more like I was like, oh, I love seeing my cousins multiple times a year because we all live relatively close, and it was just like having even more brothers and sisters, and there was always someone to hang out with. There's always someone your age to hang out with.
Yeah.
And I hope that my kids have a similar kind of relationship with their cousins, but families aren't as big anymore, I think, as they were when we were growing up, at least. But I don't even know. I think I have 19 cousins on one side and 18 on the other. It's insane.
Interestingly, I didn't have a lot of first cousins. I had, many second cousins. My dad had several siblings, but most of them didn't have kids. But it was and my mom was a single child, but she was really close to all of her cousins. So then we became close to the children of the cousins, and so, yeah, we always and then we had those, you call them your aunt and uncle, but they're not really your aunt and uncle kind of cousins. And my daughter has those too, but yeah, I mean, she's super close to, my little sister's kids, and, very grateful for that because they're basically siblings, they're so close.
Yeah.
And it definitely got better for us when we moved here up north, because now we're, only 10 minutes from my sister, whereas before we were about an hour. So,
Yeah.
That's great. But yeah, I love kind of having that. It's like you'll always have, your family friends will come and go. And sometimes you don't see family that often, but then usually when you get back together, it's, you pick up where you left off.
Yeah. And this year has been, I think, for everybody, been especially difficult on that, because the big holidays usually are a big thing. And I think, we got kind of used to it toward the end of the year. But I remember last Easter, it was like, what are we gonna do? We're gonna do Zoom for Easter? Oh, this doesn't seem normal. And my family, what we do for Easter is we crack eggs. So then we had to do this weird egg cracking thing over Zoom, and it gets lost in translation to do something like that on Zoom. So yes, I'm very much looking forward to when we can have our normal family gatherings again. We haven't had one yet with everybody, but maybe Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we're trying to have one for my daughter's birthday in a couple of weeks. So we'll see how, who all comes. I mean, my whole, group we're all vaccinated. So we feel a little bit more comfortable, hanging out together. So we'll see if people still, want to come or not. And it's, it's fine. We'll have a good time no matter what. But yeah, we miss that too. My little sister, actually, she still says that she just had, I probably shouldn't say this, but she just had her 41st birthday 2 days ago. And she, says that she's still 39 because, her 40th was during the beginning of COVID, which she didn't get to, celebrate and that kind of stuff. And now she just had her 41st, which we're still kind of in the same zone.
Yeah.
So she's like, I'm technically 39 still. I'm going to hold on to that until I get a proper celebration.
Yeah.
So,
I'm with her. Although, actually, yesterday was my birthday, and
happy birthday.
Thank you. My daughter came home with a card that she made for me at school, and it just has the front of it's just a giant 42. I was like, thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Oh, wait. So May 11th. So yeah, but yesterday was Alicia's birthday too. So it's the same. I said 2 days ago. So yeah, I don't even know what day it is anymore, but
very popular birthday.
We're birthday twins.
So I just have a few other questions. Well, maybe. So what, and I know it's only Wednesday, so we can stretch it up. What is the best thing that happened to you in the last week?
So Sunday was Mother's Day.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, so I don't know if this is a personal or professional question, but I'll go
It doesn't
personal
have to
first.
be.
And my husband, had to give him credit. He historically is not very good, with remembering that like Mother's Day, birthday, Christmas happen the same time every year. So it was a little bit of a last minute, kind of thing. And it sometimes falls flat, but I will say he really came through strong this year and, made a really nice breakfast and very thoughtful, gifts and, made me feel very special. So it was really nice and had, a really nice weekend and, again, with sports all in between and, everything else that you do. But yeah, so I think that was kind of like the highlight of my last week was, feeling appreciated.
Yeah. And I kind of feel like this Mother's Day had like a bigger weight on it because I just feel like we've been so drained the last year and a half from being pulled in so many directions that like, at least this is the consensus I got from a lot of people. Like, I think we all just felt like we needed a little bit more this time.
Yeah, you just really needed to feel. I mean, I feel like especially as, a working mother, I mean, all mothers are working, right? Whether you do it inside or outside the house or, you get paid for it or not. But I do feel like, the tanks have been completely depleted and then some. And so you're just really feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't do any more. And I feel like it's never enough. And there's not enough hours in the day and there's not enough arms on my body to take care of these things. And so, yeah, I think you're right, not really thinking about it until you said it, but it really is, getting to the point of, okay, I really just want to feel like you're doing a good job. We appreciate you and, we're just going to take care of you and let you do whatever you want to do, so.
Yeah, I think especially because I think a lot of times we probably think we aren't doing a good job, just like what you're talking about, like when you're getting pulled in all these directions and you're saying, not right now, I have to do, like, it kind of weighs on you. You feel like negative about yourself because you kind of think, maybe I could be doing better. Maybe I could be more patient. But I think I've been pretty patient. I think my patience is just running out.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this was never supposed to happen, right? We weren't supposed to be tested in this way. And, yeah, I think there's a lot of days that I feel like I'm failing the test. And, and then there's some days I feel like I'm a rock star. But then I think those are few and far between.
Yeah, and it has been like the ultimate test, I would say, for sure. Because I remember, like, I would have when you have those days, like let's pre-pandemic, I would have those days that you're like, I'm really rocking my job today, like I'm the best that I could be. But now I feel like I could have that day, but like there's a fire over here that has nothing to do with work, and it's just all coming together.
Yes, absolutely.
So this is a little bit even more, not a little more personal, but do you have any guilty pleasures?
Other than like, mindlessly scrolling through Instagram.
That's a guilty. Mine's TikTok. So whatever. Like as soon as my kids get in the shower, I get on TikTok and my husband will come upstairs. What are you doing? I'm like, TikTok. Like it's the only time I feel like I can watch it. Otherwise they're like over my shoulder trying to watch inappropriate stuff.
Yeah, I think it's that. I think it's really like, scrolling through Instagram and just trying to, be mindless for, a little bit. And then sometimes that turns into way too long of a bit. And, admittedly, my guilty pleasure at night is like doing, again, I said it before, I'm a total nerd, like doing like word games on my phone, whether it's like crossword puzzles or, like Scrabble-ish type games or, I don't know why, like that helps me go to sleep, I guess. And I feel like, I'm doing something good and trying to stave off, the eventual Alzheimer's or something, all the things you read about that you need to do to keep your mind young.
But I I think as for like, the Instagram and the TikTok, like I think we all just need a little bit of that, like anytime, like you just need that pocket of time that you're able to turn off your brain. Because let's face it, our brains are moving so much all the time, all day, and we're being like taxed in so many ways that I like crave that time that I can just be like, I'm just going to mindlessly scroll. And I know I'm wasting time, but I don't think it's a waste if it's kind of helping me recharge a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's relaxing, and sometimes you get a few laughs, and yeah, and it's just kind of like, okay, good. I'm not alone in this. Like, I feel crazy. I feel like I want to have 17 drinks right now, because so I'm glad I can relate to people that are going through those things too.
I know. Although sometimes it can be bad because you're like, oh, well, they're talking about having wine, so I can have it now, right?
Yeah. I'm like, Tequila Tuesday, Wine Wednesday, right? Like, I'm like, I have all these new mantras.
So, and this is a question I've been asking everybody, and I don't know, I love the answer I get from all different people. So what's one movie that you will watch regardless of how many times you've seen it, if you find it on TV or?
Oh, it's so funny. I would say like the National Treasure movies. And so I'm a big Nicolas Cage fan.
I love those movies.
I will watch them over and over and over again. And it's so funny because, Mackenzie has watched them, with me too. And I just, she's like, Mom, are there any more? And she, gets into them just like I do. I'm like, oh, now I've created the monster. And it's so funny because she is probably like most kids, which they'll just watch like the same episodes of shows over and over and over again. And I'll, my husband and I'll be like, oh my gosh, you've watched this episode like 17 times. Why are you watching it again? How could you possibly watch this again? I have this show memorized now. And then yet you just asked me that question about like what show, and that I can watch that movie over and over and over again. And I'm like, oh, maybe the apple doesn't fall that far from the tree. If I am looking for something and like I can't find anything new to watch, I'm like, I'll go to my default and I'll watch National Treasure for the 100th time.
Yeah, I mean, I love those movies, so I share your enthusiasm. But one movie that I will watch regardless of how many times I've seen it is Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, I love it. Like, and it's always on, so it's really easy to catch. It's like, it's going to be on some channel at any given day.
And and that movie I think is a great one because you can like belly laugh in that movie, and then you can kind of like cry a little in that movie, and then you can get like sappy, romantically sappy. I'm like, it hits like all the marks. That's a good one.
Yeah. So one last question, and this is another silly one, but what's your favorite ice cream topping?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, it sounds kind of lame to say it, but I think I would just go with the good old rainbow sprinkles.
Yes, I'm with you. I'm usually vanilla with chocolate sprinkles every time.
I do love sprinkles, and they're fun, they're pretty, and they're tasty. And, whereas I have to say, my daughter is a gummy bear person. She, gummy bears or gummy worms. And I do not like my candy of choice is definitely something gummy. I like, that kind of candy, but on ice cream, they get hard and they're not as enjoyable. No. And she loves them, and I will not put that on there. So I got to say, tried and true rainbow sprinkles all the way.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like whenever we get the softy truck, like they get these, the I don't know, a million different things. I'm like, I will just have a kitty size vanilla with chocolate sprinkles, please. Yeah. That's all I want.
Very simple and so delicious.
But it's funny, we were in Florida recently and we did a ice cream challenge. They wanted to try ice cream at every ice cream place like on the island.
Oh, nice.
We were there for like an extended period of time. We were there for like 2.5 weeks. But my mom has a place down there, so we just like did school and work and everything down there. But they each chose their own like flavor, and I think my one daughter was cookie dough, and the other one was cotton candy. Now, I cannot think of a more disgusting ice cream than cotton candy. Like, it is awful, but she would always get it with gummy worms or gummy bears on it. And I guess if you're going to top it, cotton candy ice cream with anything, it's going to be those things. But it was god awful. Like, every time she's like, do you want to try? I was like, no, I don't. Like, I'll try the cookie dough over there, but I don't need to have another sample of cotton candy ice cream.
Oh, that's great. It's so fun to see kind of, how what they pick, right? Whereas my daughter, other kids are doing things like your kids, cotton candy, cookie dough, things like that. She wants the darkest chocolate ice cream on the planet. The darker, the better. We've actually gone into kind of like specialty ice cream places, and where they have like a super dark, bitter type chocolate ice cream. And she's like, yeah, I'll want that. And they're like, why don't you try it first? I'm like, well, okay, she'll try it, but she's going to want it. And they're like, a lot of kids don't like this one. And she'll try it. And she's like, yep, that's what I want. And it's, I mean, God bless her.
Does she get a top with like coffee beans?
No, she'll get it still get it topped with the gummy bears, but yeah, she wants that like dark, bitter chocolate, it's so funny. And that's, and, people will be like, oh, we have this like super double, triple, chocolate brownie. And she's like, nope, it's got to be plain chocolate ice cream, but the darker, the better.
Hey, how about just regular dark chocolate bars?
She does, but but they have to be like, she's a purist. Like I had a former coworker who used to buy, like these would go to this like specialty chocolate store and buy, whatever, like 90% cacao or whatever however you say that word, the cocoa bean thingy. And, and I like it because I do like that, dark, bitter chocolate too, but she loved it. Like, and she doesn't really care for milk chocolate. Like, she's like,
Really?
somebody will have a milk chocolate bar. She's like, it's too sweet. Meanwhile, I'm like, really? Are you the same child that just ate like, 2 cups of, gummy worms? Because one of those, kind of makes my sugar spike and you're having like handfuls. But yeah, when it comes to chocolate, yep, she wants dark and bitter. Crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be an expensive habit at first going forward.
Seriously.
The darker it is, the more it costs, I think.
Yes. Although, it makes it a little bit easier come like, Easter time and things like that. I'm like, yeah, I couldn't find any dark chocolate. Sorry.
Yeah.
And she won't eat the other stuff, so she doesn't care.
That does make it simpler, I guess. But then like sucks for you because sometimes it's nice to have all that chocolate hanging around, peanut butter cups and things.
Yeah, it's good to have to feed those stressful moments, but not good to have for, the figure.
No, definitely not. Well, Dana, thank you so much for coming on again. I always love chatting with you. I could probably people could just listen to us talk about our lives for hours.
Yeah, it's so enjoyable.
For all our listeners out there, if you like what you hear, please subscribe to the podcast at Apple Podcasts, or we also can be found on YouTube at Legal Navigator, and give us a like and subscribe if you like what you're hearing, and we can keep giving free content.